Thank you.
I want to get home to my tiny, so the sooner the better.
Yeah.
My mom says he's
Yeah,
not step over.
My boy's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Amen. Amen. There's no doubt. Kids, even though sometimes they can be stressful, and
It's the best kind of stress in the world.
it is something else. Kids are such a blessing.
Yeah.
While you were in the bathroom, Miss Janelle asked me about AJ's court status.
Right.
And I just told her that, as far as I know, there's an eliminate motion starting on the 14th and then of July, and then the actual jury is supposed to be brought in on July 21st. She asked when she would be needed. It's probably safe to say that it'd be some distance after July 21st, and Mr. Hankins will be given heads up as to when you're needed, and he'll relay that information to you. And Chief Deputy DA Dave Harris is going to be the one that is on the prosecution team on that, and he has all of Mr. Hankins' contact information, and you will get that, and we will try to give you as much heads up as possible.
So what happens on the 30th when I go to court then? Is it going to be announced that I've already taken this deal, or?
That would be a good question that Mr.
Okay.
Hankins and Dave Harris would probably have to
Understood.
talk to. And
Okay, we'll worry about that.
I just had I don't know if you ever...
I'll get you a copy of this for today so Mr. Hankins can have that as well.
I just had Nikki and my paralegal pull that up off of the court computer. So she made a copy of it. Frankly, I was leaving and didn't review it.
It's okay. Well, I knew that he goes to court on the 2nd, so I just was wondering.
What is your present situation with Mark Davis and AJ?
I don't talk to Mark Davis whatsoever. Absolutely not. Nothing.
Because it goes into what you were previously saying, as if you felt maybe Mark Davis is the most responsible for this.
It doesn't play into it. It's just the honest truth. Mark was...
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, Mark was the one that did these motions, and that's it. You know, just like I wouldn't say Mark had anything to do with people being brought into the office, you know. You know, that's something
Right.
that you'd have to discuss with AJ, and
Right.
the motions are something you need to discuss with Mark. I mean,
I think that's a fair statement.
It's pretty cut and dry when it comes to that.
So you're saying, and I'm just summing this all up before John gets started with some other contractor
Eventually
stuff.
he'll get to
He's going through all these motions, but I'm going to cut to the chase here and say that when it comes to motions, this is not your business.
Absolutely
You signed
not.
some things that you should have looked over that you didn't, and you're sorry for that,
Absolutely.
and whatever the consequences are, you're willing to stand up like a big girl, put on your big girl britches with your lawyer and say, hey,
Which
Mea
I did in
culpa.
the feds. I told the grand jury, I said, hey.
And then when it
that's what
comes to
happened.
all of the other stuff that we're talking
That's
about.
something else too, is it's been said that I didn't go to the grand jury, but I did. I mean, I don't know what that was if it wasn't the grand jury.
Are you talking about the interview with us?
I don't know, but I know that it was said at AJ's last court date that there was no grand jury testimony.
Well,
here.
see,
But I thought that was the because I went and I met with you and
Right.
the AUSA when we sat
Right.
down. We had the Queen for a day, and
Right.
then I got called back again when I went in front of a panel. I went in front of a jury. There were people and they were asking me
okay,
questions.
yeah, no, I wasn't there.
No, you weren't there.
I
That time.
was Ken Tam there?
I don't remember. I know the AUSA was there.
well, we asked-
and it was the same kinds of questions like pertaining to this stuff. So
Oh,
I don't.
okay, well, we'll have to ask about that. I'll make a note of that.
But what we're getting at from here is that what you're saying, in essence, is that when it comes to all these motions that Investigator Renucius is going to be showing you and discussing with all this stuff, you weren't the one that really had the motive or the desire or the reason to want to perpetrate a fraud on the county or anything like that.
Absolutely not. I had no gain. It didn't matter to my position one way or the
You
other.
were simply signing a document that was being put in front of you with the understanding that the person that had completed the document had the wherewithal, had the integrity, and had the ability to be forthright and honest in whatever he was preparing, saying Mark Davis.
That's an
specifically.
absolutely true statement, yes.
Well put.
And when it comes to this whole other element, when you're talking about, you'll have to talk with AJ about the whole sweating stuff. You weren't a part of bringing people in to sweat them for dollars, or you weren't the one that was actually doing the handcuffing and handcuffing them to a pole or a
I
weight
refuse to
bench
do
or-
handcuffing at my bail renewal class. Like, that's how, anti-handcuff I am,
So you're saying,
I've never put anybody in handcuffs.
in your position, you're saying, I want out of this.
I feel that I don't, it's a hard situation, I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear.
I love AJ, and I see where he's coming from, and I really believe that he didn't have intentions of anything being illegal. I mean, why would he do that? That's not him, and I think
But
unfortunately.
you have to understand the whole persona about this, and a business owner, and you talked about the reputation and a desire to be the ultimate. You can't have people kind of punking you, you know?
But, then again, that's not something that, I really played into. As far as, AJ making the comment that I'm his right hand is, it wasn't that I was the right hand because I knew everything in the business. I was just trust, I'm family. I love his kids, I mean,
Right.
they're my kids, that's the first 8 kids that
But
I
when
ever
he's
had,
saying, but when he's saying this, he's not saying that Janelle was the one that was actually in charge of sweating the people. Janelle was the one that was actually making sure that all these motions, all the judges got lied to on all these motions.
No, absolutely not.
So, although he's saying you're his right hand, this is with,
I would say I don't know what he's talking about in that whole situation, but I do see why he saw me as that. I was, for as much stuff as, people were doing, and AJ's already admitted, things that were going on behind his back, he needed somebody to trust. And I was new, I was fresh,
honest,
Yeah, I had no...
ethical.
I had no reason to favor or not favor anybody. All I knew was that he needed somebody to come in and just, teach these people how to be human beings, basically. Like, it wasn't even about the business. I was filing files and telling people to flush the toilet after themselves. And,
Right.
I was just that person, I was the Janelle, I can't handle these people anymore, I need you to I can't tell people to do the same stupid thing every day, like,
So, is it safe to say that when it came to any of that stuff, that before things kind of got out of hand, that you would be the person to be trusted to say, hey, try to talk to these people reasonably?
To some extent, yeah. Most of the time, the problem with our, that was my issue of being office manager, that maybe wasn't as, what's the word I'm looking for?
Forceful?
I wouldn't say that because that makes it sound violent, but I wasn't as brave as I should have been as an office manager maybe, and like to sugarcoat things and not be in people's face so much, because
That's not you.
I'd never been around that before,
Right.
I still call my parents mommy and daddy,
Yeah. That's a good thing.
So, that was kind of the problem I had, was that these people kind of took me for a joke, and then everybody was mad at me because then I wasn't, I was AJ's little buddy or whatever, and
Right.
so, which is how everybody portrayed me. Oh, if AJ does it, Janelle does it. If AJ does it, Janelle does it. If AJ does it, Janelle does it. That's,
And I think with all the documentation that we got and all the interviews, that's the reason why charges were initially brought against you. I think you got to understand that. And then seeing how the documentation worked with you signing off on those
Well, now that I
documents.
see those motions.
Then we all said, okay, well, there's 3 people that deserve to be at the table, and that's why the 3 were brought in. But digressing from all of that,
Yeah.
I think you're doing the right thing now and taking care of this. Go ahead, John, did you have some questions on those motions?
Well, I did, okay, I wanted to point this out to you. Okay, so we talked about Cap Tenon and basically the 4 different
Yes.
motions that got filed. One saying that we know he's missing, we're looking for him.
We're looking for him.
And then the other 3 saying we didn't know he was
There
missing.
was technicalities, I guess. That's what
Well,
I remember of it, but
It
yeah.
kind of starts that way, but then it kind of morphs, and by the time Rohrbar gets to it, it's, we have no forfeiture file, we collect the mail, we never got notice of this, we don't know anything about it, but it's hard to keep with that because of,
Now, a question is, with that motion for Rohrbar, was that filed after the raid, or was that all done prior to the raid?
that was all done prior.
Okay.
It was done prior.
Because
Okay, so at the same time, Tammy Reyes, or AKA Tammy Beltran,
okay.
on case 1216996 and 1209529, and basically we pulled the information sheets from
Bond tracker.
well, I pulled it from Bond Tracker. Now, off the top of my head, I don't know if this would have obviously came from the.
It could either came from Mark's filed office.
It's either Mark's file or the client file.
Okay.
And I don't know which offhand, but it's 6419 is the bait stamp. And there's an entry at the bottom dated 7/12/07. If you could just kind of look that over and read that out to us.
Fred has also tried to locate because of check fraud. He would be involved in forfeiture as well. Okay.
Okay, so that basically says we received forfeiture for both cases dated 7/2/7.
That's correct, that's what it says, yes.
Okay, and it says, basically that's your initials, JML? and
Yes, sir,
Page?
that's mine.
Okay, and basically you were going to inform Fred,
Mhm.
I think is what it says.
Yeah, it
Okay.
says, give it to Ray to locate, and
So on 12/23/08, we served a search warrant, and on, starting on page 6514 date stamp, and going into 6516 on the information sheet, which is what I pulled from Bond Tracker. You'll now notice that there's there is an entry for 7/12, but it's not the same, and just so you know.
is it the same, but is it the same exact, because that was something that I had explained when he came in the second time, that some of these people have multiple bond trackers, like, so it may not,
Okay.
I mean, I understand what you guys are saying, that the notes don't match, but that may be something that,
So going back to 6420, which is one page further, and it's basically the same information sheet, but there's one extra. This one gets cut off before the second entry for 7/12. So there's actually two entries on 7/12 on page 6420.
okay,
But now when we come over to 6516, which is now the electronic version, which is this one,
okay,
that's printed from the from Bond Tracker, there's one of the two 7/12 dates, but the one saying that we received the forfeiture letter is now missing, correct? Do you see?
yeah, that does it, that's what it looks like.
Okay, so that one has been deleted. That is one that has been deleted, and like I said, there was several in there.
And you know, my answer to that is, you know, it could have been anybody. I mean, and I don't know who would have had the motive, or, I mean, why.
Was it you?
No, I can't honestly.
I know who would have the motive, but the question is who actually did it, Ms. Janelle?
No,
Yes,
I mean,
we
I
know
have
who
no
has the
reason
motive.
to delete notes.
Well, who would have the motive to do it?
I don't know, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to make any speculations. I mean, I'm just saying that,
We'll take it from our point of view.
oh, I'm sorry.
Take it from our point of view.
It
There's
looks
only
strange.
three people
It does.
involved really with the motions.
Give it some thoughts. Who would have the motive?
I mean,
Who's paying out on him, Janelle?
well, AJ is, but I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily the one that deleted the notes.
I'm not saying that he deleted them, but ultimately, who pays for them if you get stuck with summary judgment?
Is
who
Mark
pays
Davis
for it?
paying for it?
No,
Why?
because
Isn't
it's not his
that part of the
bond.
contractual agreement, that he gets paid $400, but at
Oh,
some
he
point-
gets paid for the
He gets
motion?
paid for the motion, but at some point if that motion fails, is it Mark Davis's responsibility to then pay
No.
on that particular bond?
No, it becomes our responsibility to pay, or, no, actually, the surety has to pay for it,
Right.
then it becomes our responsibility to pay the
That's all
surety
fine.
back.
Right, okay, but out of the three of you connected to the motions, Mark doesn't pay anything out of his pocket, and you don't pay anything out of your pocket, correct? It could affect you in the sense that if AJ had to pay, he would have to pay the money, and that would be money that wouldn't be in the business,
That's true.
stuff like that. But as far as, AJ's the ultimate payer of these summary judgments.
Okay,
Not you, not
No.
Mark Davis.
No.
Mark Davis could have made money on these.
but he wouldn't have taken a loss.
You would not have made any money on these.
No, there was no profit or loss.
There was
to
no
anybody.
profit or loss to you personally. Were you ever present, and I know we've already answered this, and I just want to go over it again. Were you ever present when Mark and AJ had conversations regarding falsification of?
No, absolutely not.
Did Mark or AJ ever have conversations with you about filing fraudulent motions?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay, so it's your statement that basically Mark would bring you these sheets, you would sign them, without reading them sometimes? Or
The
did
truth
you ever
is-
read them?
No, I never.
Okay.
Mark would bring these motions in, most of the time, he would bring them in last minute. I would sign them, no questions asked.
But you even take it one step further, Janelle. You say that not only was it suspicious in that he brought these motions, but he wanted to maintain those motions and keep his fingertips on those motions. and
Which
not
is
allow you to-
suspicious to me now that I'm processing it, but I mean, at the time, like, I don't know, that's just how it works. Just like, I mean, a bail agent doesn't give the bond to somebody else to go file, and you
Right.
have them sign it, you don't ever let it go until
Right.
it goes to the jail. I
Right.
mean, now it seems odd to me, but
At the time it did.
But at the time it didn't, because I mean, you're wrapped up in the business and you're trusting these, I'm supposed to be learning from these people, you know, I mean,
And that's what your statement was, is that I think you told the U.S. Attorney that, AJ was the one that was teaching you. And he was supposed to be teaching you this whole process.
that's true.
As far as the motions, so you never had any conversations with them as far as, hey, let's doctor these or fraudulently do this, or it
No.
was just like that. Now, you provide Orbar the files?
More about, yes,
Okay. In this case, he filed the motion,
saying that we didn't get the one I read earlier.
the one, well, he filed the motion saying we never received the, was it ever relayed to him that we actually did receive the forfeiture letter?
To the best of my knowledge, in order for Roundabout to do a motion, we would have had to send him the file and the minute orders, so I don't know.
Well, in this case, like in this.
But I think that, in that motion that I read, he's not, if I remember correctly, he's not saying we didn't receive it, he's saying that it wasn't prepared properly, which is the understanding that I was under, so.
Well,
so I
but in
think-
your declaration, that's really not the case.
Oh.
Your declaration is, I open all the mail, we never received a forfeiture letter.
But she's saying she doesn't understand that because she never prepared those motions. They were prepared by Mark. She simply signed them.
We're not talking about Mark's motion.
Talking about Roundabout, but
Oh,
essentially it
Roundabout's
says the same.
Well, you go into greater detail in
Okay.
that. Okay. Did you prepare the declaration
Not that I'm aware of.
for Aurora?
As far as I know, we would talk on the phone, they would, ask us questions, and then we would tell them, and they would prepare it, and we would sign it.
Did you, how did that come by mail to you and you?
The declaration itself?
Yes.
Sometimes they would overnight it, and sometimes we would get the fax copy. It was just depending, I think we always had to file the actual original, so we would have to wait for it to come overnight, because the courthouse wants the actual signatures.
Okay, so it would come overnight, you would open it up. Did you ever read the ones Aurora Bar saying?
I can't say I did or didn't, honestly.
Okay, so basically, your signature got on it, what it
That
says.
was part of the job for me.
Well, who provided the information to him?
It would have been myself. I would assume it would have been myself, because AJ would have told me this motion needs to go to Rohrbaugh, because I was in that position, and
Did Mark?
I may have done it myself, or I may have tasked it out to somebody else, but ultimately, I don't think that Rohrbaugh would have did a motion without all of the information. I mean, he's a pretty upright guy. I mean, I'm assuming he would have made sure that he had all the minute orders and the file. I mean, nobody does a motion with nothing, so.
So what you're saying is that that information that went to Rohrbaugh was incorrect, and then you signed that declaration.
Probably true, yes.
Can I ask a question on that you brought up? Who made the decision, or why was the decision made to use Rohrbaugh on certain motions and Mark Davis on others?
I mean, I guess the best way I'd chalk up is to just, AJ and Mark had in and outs. There were times when, Mark was, not doing what he was supposed to, and AJ would get frustrated with him and say, hey, we're done working with Mark, and have Rohrbaugh do our motions, and then.
Mark would come back?
Mark would come back, and they'd be getting along again, and, Mark would be doing the motions again, and, like I said, that wasn't something that I ever really understood. It
So
was
you weren't
just-
privy to all of the battles or the disagreements between Mark and AJ?
No, I
They never
mean-
mentioned anything? Either side never mentioned anything to you
Not really.
about
I mean,
one
the
or
most I
other?
ever heard is, Mark's a jerk, or he's annoying, or he's a liar, and, he's, the same stuff that
Right.
everybody argues about, but nothing that as pertains to, the motion specifically.
But if Mark was all of these things and he had a reputation of being a liar, why would AJ use him for his motions?
I would have to, my only guess would just be because
Financially?
there's nobody else to use. I mean, there was nobody else to go to. Mark as far as I know, Mark was the guy in Modesto to go to. We could ship him off to Roerdal and, deal with all that, or we had somebody who worked here locally that could get the file together, could go to the courthouse himself, could handle business, and he was effective. I mean, ultimately, he was effective.
And I think you bring up a good point, is because you said earlier that, you thought Attorney Rohrbaugh was an upright, honest guy. And what you're saying is that you don't think Mark is one and the same with that caliber of people, right?
Personal, that's a personal opinion, because
But it's not,
really
because
personally
it's been talked about within the business that Mark Davis is a liar.
Yeah.
And it was well known that he was, but yet AJ would still use him instead of going to an upright lawyer such as Mr. Rohrbaugh.
All I can say to that is people make bad choices.
Okay.
I don't know his mentality.
But it goes back into, I think, the financial end of that as well.
It may, but I
Mark
can't.
Davis
I
is certainly
can't say
cheaper,
that
and
that's
he
my
maybe does have these connects, and he maybe does have these contacts within the courthouse, or maybe he does have this good old boy relationship with somebody that he can get a slap on the back or a rubber stamp on the paperwork.
Rohrbach is known in the industry.
Yes, well known, well respected too within the bail bond business.
I can't speak for AJ and say why he made those decisions to keep using Mark. I can't. It was never my place to question, and I can honestly say I never did question. It wasn't my place to say, hey, I don't want you to use Mark anymore. That wasn't my place. That would be something that.
Let me ask you this, Janelle, while we're on topic here. You said that Mark had this reputation of lying, but yet you never checked his work. Why is that? A juror or a judge would be wanting to know why. Why would you never check this work if you thought that your boss had issues with this guy, and then at the same time there were issues with his integrity? Why would you not want to just check something before you signed it?
Because my whole state of mind was he knew what he was doing, and regardless or not if I liked the guy, he knew how to do his job. And
at least that's what you thought.
Yeah, and when it needed to be done, it needed to be done. And who was I to hold up the process and ask questions? And even if I would have, what kind of questions would I have asked?
So you're saying it was just basically unfamiliarity on your part, that you would feel as if you wouldn't be able to question him, even though he might have this reputation of being dishonest or being deceptive. You don't have the knowledge to be able to refute that
related it to his
information.
work.
Right.
I knew that that's the kind of person Mark was, but you gotta. I guess I kind of just had to assume that even if Mark was a horrible person, at least he knew how to do his job right.
Okay.
And I guess that's what I can chalk it up to.
However, it's a little different when somebody has the reputation of being dishonest. Don't you think?
Yes.
I might think bad things
But
about...
I was young and naive, and I did what I felt was what I had to do for my position, and if that meant signing stuff without reading it, then that's what I did. And it's just like a lot of people do. Like when you sign a phone contract, do you read the whole thing? No, you just trust that it says what it needs to say and you sign it. Will I ever sign anything without reading again? Absolutely not.
I think we saw that earlier when you were looking over your contract.
But
I think you made that very clear with us.
So I want to go back to that. So 6502, starting at that, is your declaration in the case of Beltran, which is the Tammy Beltran, which is the ones we just looked at.
Okay.
The motions were identical, if I remember right. Okay, so I'm not saying that this case, she had two cases.
Okay.
The motions were the same, and according to the entry, it was 2 forfeiture letters.
Okay.
So here you have your declaration, starting at 6502. Basically, line 8, page 2, and I can share this with you if you'd like. It is part of my job to closely monitor all bail forfeitures sent to our office for the financial well-being of the company. It's our operational policy that I personally open all mail. When mail is delivered to our office, it goes to me or placed on my desk, and you separate it. I immediately open mail from the courts, which includes forfeiture notices. And they're the highest priority.
I remember that.
Okay.
I recall that, yeah.
Okay. I make copies of the forfeiture notice, which I give to AJ, who then assigns the matter to an agent who wrote to otherwise deals with bail forfeiture, and place the original bail forfeiture notice with the forfeiture file, which I personally opened. And now in this case, this is Tammy Beltran, but I guess you didn't even, it didn't get changed from Taft Tenon in this case, and I just now noticed that, but.
So it was a cut and paste.
Right. They were essentially,
Which
there
is
was like
Mark's
6 of
motions
them.
were tons of.
Well, did Mark write this, or did Rohrbar, or
I
did
don't-
you, or?
I didn't produce that motion, I guarantee
Okay, so
you
you
that.
never produced it, so it would have had to
Absolutely
been either the attorney produced it, or
Mark did.
or Mark did.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says here, the first notice I received of a bail forfeiture on the defendant Tenon was the summary judgment notice, okay? And this one, I think if I remember right, this one is blank and there was another one.
Janelle, did I
somewhere.
understand what you said correctly, is that even if there were motions that were contracted through Mr. Rohrbaugh, that if Mr. Rohrbaugh wanted you to do a declaration in support of an opposition or whatever he was doing on his end, that you would still have to write a declaration, but yet you wouldn't do it, Mark Davis would still do that for you?
No, not the ones with Rohrbaugh. As far as I remember, the ones with Rohrbaugh, they would get I would give the information from bond trackers. So most of the
Okay.
time they would be able to do
A motion
our
while they're talking to you on the
declaration
phone?
just based on the notes, and then just, confirming the note says this, the note says this on the phone.
Okay.
But yeah, Mark, as far as I know, Mark, they never crossed over. They may have, but as far as I remember, they never worked together, or
No.
not to the best of my knowledge. I can't recall a certain instance to give you guys.
But if
so.
Mr. Bernstein or Mr. Rohrbaugh asked you to do something on your end for them, either they would supply the motion for you to sign, or you would do your own declaration and send it to them. Mark Davis wouldn't do anything from that point.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, now, actually, this one, is actually Bernstein.
Okay.
I thought it was. Does Rohrbar work for Bernstein? Is that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought he was on his own, sorry. Okay, so that one, there's a second, that one was blank, but there's a second one, not the September 4th, but there's a October 1st, 2008 filed one.
Okay.
It's basically the same thing, except this one has your signature dated October 1st, 2008. But in there it says, upon receipt of the summary judgment, I immediately went to my forfeiture files to check on the notice of forfeiture. I did not have a forfeiture file for this defendant. Had I ever received notice of the forfeiture, I would have taken the usual procedure steps that I always do when a forfeiture notice is received. I have thoroughly checked my forfeiture files and no file for this defendant exists. Now, if we go back to our original entry, to the 6419,
It says that the forfeiture was received. The only thing that I can say in regards to this is that the file itself may have truthfully been missing. Now, I know this is what Bond Tracker says.
no, this is what Bond Tracker says.
Okay, or
This
that's,
is the one that is now missing.
okay, but I just
is
mean
what-
in general, these printouts are from Bond Tracker.
Right, but
The
this
act-
was recovered from the actual file, which
That was in the file.
Oh,
that
okay.
was in the file.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
But you see how it looks?
Yeah, I
You're
see
filing
how it looks.
declarations
that say one
says-
thing, and then you guys are finding stuff that.
And this
say
is separate and apart from Mark Davis.
not
but-
the same.
but it goes
Mark
back-
Davis's name is nowhere on this
I
one. This
don't
is
know why they.
Rohrbar filed this.
I don't understand. I don't have an explanation for that, because I mean, I never withheld information.
You didn't create this,
I didn't create it,
document.
but I signed it.
but you signed it. So who created it? Was it Mark Davis?
If it was Warren, if the motion's from them, then I would have to believe that they're the ones that created it, because
Based on information that you provided, or Mark Davis provided, or based on the file information?
I wish I could remember more clearly, because I don't.
But you see the discrepancy.
I do see the discrepancy, but now that you're asking me the question of who actually provided Warren Ballot the information,
It had to have been you, correct?
yeah,
I
but
mean, this is the time and the
but-
period. Janelle.
yeah, but this is the information that I would have given them. I don't.
You don't know why you would.
Janelle, you realize that you cannot be charged with.
May I ask?
Yes.
No, I understand. I have no reason to
Janelle.
lie. No,
Mr. Hankins wants to say something.
Had you made a prior statement to that effect, I could see a lawyer going and saying, oh yeah, I remember that situation, look to this earlier file, take the statement from there and plug it in here. Kind of like,
If there was an earlier file.
if
May
there was an
very well
earlier
be
file
true.
with the statement.
I think the thing is that it wasn't going back up to Mark Davis's, I think the other one I showed you, I think that was, this one was the 65, or 6185.
okay.
This is for Tenon, but I think the problem became is this was basically what it is. And it says there's not as much information
Okay.
under Mark Davis's, and then it gets much more detailed when we get to Rohrbar.
So there was additional information that was put in when it came time for Rohrbaugh to do his opposition.
Correct. But I'll move on from there.
Sure, sure.
We can.
Well, no, I mean, I just truthfully wish that I could remember the.
Janelle, you're not
the
backing away from
extent.
saying that you didn't, if you had conversations with Mr. Rohrbaugh and there's something wrong in the motions, what you're saying is that he is still upright and forthwith, but that you may have conveyed information to him improperly.
Yeah, that may very well be true. I have no reason to believe that
Do you-
Rohrbaugh would have did something
Okay, that's what we want to
falsely,
know.
yeah.
Do we need to look at Rohrbaugh?
No, absolutely. I don't think that Rohrbaugh would have did anything falsely. It may have just been a miscommunication of information, or, I mean, I don't even know.
And what John is trying to ask is, did you have malicious intent in doing this? And if you didn't, did somebody else have that? And did they ask you to do that?
Did they direct you?
Absolutely not. I never was ever told to lie to anybody about anything by anybody.
Has anybody ever asked you to be dishonest in that business?
No.
For you to go along and play these games?
No. I
Have
had no
Have
idea
they
what
asked
was
you to come
going
to
on.
court? You know, for instance, we were at court, county council and I, with you and AJ and Mark several different times on some of these motions. Did anybody at any time there ask you to be dishonest and testify untruthfully if called as a
No, I
witness?
went to court under the guise that
You were going to tell the
I was
truth.
signing these motions saying that they were prepared incorrectly, and I would stand up to that because it wasn't signed, and I thought that was a legal stand. I wasn't going there under the.
But reading this, you realize that that's not what this says. This says, I never received it. But then looking at the
Which is
evidence,
absolutely absurd when there's a forfeiture order stapled to the file.
You see what we're getting at.
Yeah, I see.
Okay. I want to go back to your interview on 12/23 of '08,
Okay.
which is basically 4875 and 4876, a report that was written. I'm not going to go into it word for word, but
What time is this?
this is the date of the first warrant.
The first search.
First,
Okay.
first search warrant was Sergeant Tim Reed, and it was David Watson.
Yeah,
I
the
think.
first time we were all there. Okay, I remember that.
Basically, on that time, anything that you would like to say that, was this a truthful statement, untruthful statement? Did you lie to them about anything? You can look it over if you want. Is there anything that you may have omitted?
I don't think so. I was pretty honest with you guys from the beginning. Let me just make sure.
And you're honest with us now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just wanted that clarification.
Yes.
And you're going to continue to stay honest, correct, Mr. Janelle?
Absolutely. That's who I am. Honest.
Take your time.
For safety reasons, when I stated that people are simply going to the office to do their rules, when asked if they've seen anyone handcuffed to the exercise of equipment in the office, as to the issue, have you seen anyone handcuffed to the equipment?
Me too.
When asked if Yeah, that's not right.
Oh, what's not
Well,
right?
because it says we asked what her responsibility, she stated that she is responsible for making sure the books are done correctly. I don't think,
And I
which
think
is what
you-
it says right here, I don't.
Okay,
think it's-
okay,
oh,
so-
Okay, well, I just want to make sure.
Okay, so that's
And then-
on the first page.
And then here, when it says if I'd ever seen anybody handcuffed to the weight equipment, I have, and I've already admitted to that. I
Okay.
don't know if it.
That was
oh,
Dennis
wait.
Whitfield, right?
Yeah, which is, okay, it does say it here.
Okay,
Let's
Okay.
talk about that. Did you want to talk about that real quick?
okay.
What did you see on that particular occasion with Dennis?
Whitfield had been brought in.
Was he
and
the only one? Janelle, there was some others that said that they thought you had witnessed.
There were other people that were brought in handcuffs, but none that I can remember that were like actually handcuffed for an extended period of time to a piece of equipment.
When you're saying extended period of time, what does that mean?
I mean, like enough time to negotiate. Like Whitfield was back there.
So you're saying that they stayed in handcuffs during the negotiation period?
Just for Whitfield, and the issue was that Whitfield was going to go back to jail. That was what the plan was, and he wanted to do anything he could to not go back to jail. So AJ allowed him to stay at the office. I supplied him. I want to say it was no more than
Couple hours?
I wouldn't say a couple hours. I would say no more than like maybe an hour and a half.
And he was allowed to make
He
phone
was-
calls to try to
he was
dial for
supplied-
cash?
I don't know if it was necessarily for cash or what the whole contractual basis was, because I know that if I'm not mixing people, I know
Because
that,
you've
I
witnessed
know
others.
I know that AJ had already had, they were gonna do like a car, they were gonna do collateral for the bond, because there originally was no collateral in the bond, they were gonna add collateral, the bond was gonna be good to go.
Okay.
Then there were questions with that, so I don't know if that's what was being discussed at the time, but I know that I was there, I supplied him with a phone to talk on, he got water, he was allowed to go to the restroom. He wasn't like exclusively stuck there, it was just basically.
No, he was, because I think
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
the front
He
door
was-
was locked to the business?
Really?
And, yeah,
Wrong reports.
isn't that kind of like what you told the U.S.
Right.
attorneys, is that
That would be.
when these people were brought into handcuffs, the front
7
door was locked to prevent
Wait a minute, not
clients?
there, and Whitfield wasn't locked.
This is,
There were times when the door was locked.
Why?
I guess it's because they were a flight risk. I mean, that's the only thing I can say.
Or-
They were in there and they're on contract, and they know that they've, not held up their end of the contract, and, we've now got them in custody.
Where were they
They're-
put within the business, Janelle, when they came in?
We had the double office, and then there was the
So
weight
they were
room.
put behind locked doors, out
No,
of the
they
public
would-
view.
no,
The
they
front
would-
doors were locked on the business.
They
Why?
weren't locked between, locked out of view. Like, that second set of doors was still open. Like, somebody could still see them from where they were. We didn't shut.
From where? From
From-
the street?
Or from if somebody was there were other people in the business. So even if the door and the
So
door
these
being.
people were sweating in front of other people that were coming in as what, to try to be made an example out of, or?
No. See, the way the office is set up, and
I know
that's-
the way the office
yeah.
is set up, Janelle, you
But
don't
we
gotta explain
weren't-
it to me.
but-
Answer the questions.
I am answering the questions.
Okay.
People that would come in, that were just coming in to make payments and stuff, would come
Okay.
to the front. The desks that were in the front.
Not if the front doors were locked.
Well, we would let them in. We had a key. It wasn't that business was locked and shut down while these people were in here. I mean, I would still
Sounds
lock
like
the
it they
door.
were.
I would still unlock
Why
the door
would,
and let
why
people
would you
in
be
and
sweating
out.
these people in handcuffs, chaining them to poles and weight benches and everything else, if you were gonna allow people to just view them as they're coming in to make payments? It doesn't even
But
sound
they
like a
weren't.
good
But
business
they weren't in
practice.
handcuffs. The
You said they were in handcuffs
The
when they were
handcuffs
being
were removed.
negotiated.
Yeah, but the handcuffs were removed
How long
once
did
they
the
got.
negotiation process take place? Was this somewhere where I'm giving you a phone to make a phone call, or now you're gonna stay in handcuffs until this happens? And if
Okay, well,
not,
let me
then-
clarify though. Okay, there were people that were brought in handcuffs into the weight room.
Who?
And, I mean,
I think she'd like to clarify a little bit.
Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, there were defendants that were brought into the weight room, and I can't give you names. I know that there were people that were brought in by David and the other people that were working with David at any given time. They were brought in handcuffs, they were sit down, AJ would discuss with them, the handcuffs would then be removed, and they'd be moved up into the middle office where we would negotiate. The procedure sometimes was to lock the door if we felt that they, might try to run during negotiations. Once they were in that middle office, they weren't in handcuffs anymore.
Okay,
And that's
so
why the
the
people that were,
transition-
that's why, and I know you had asked that question, why did the people you brought in handcuffs, why'd you keep them in the weight room? Because we didn't want to bring them up in the front, to put them on display, so that people be like, oh, look, there's people in handcuffs, and, we don't want to make it any worse for these people, it's
Okay,
already bad.
Okay, that clarifies that.
Yeah.
So what was the transition then? You were brought in handcuffs and you went from one room, and then once the negotiations failed at that point, then they were brought to a second room? Or if when they were brought to that first room, if they were gonna cooperate, then they went to the other transitional room to where he could take the handcuffs off. How did that what was the avenue there? Tell me how the traffic cop directed things.
Well, and I'm just saying David because he had different people that work with him at different times, so
Okay.
it may not have just been David.
You're saying
alone in the
AJ had
situation.
these individuals,
So-
but AJ would be the primary negotiator for these contracts.
Yeah, David would bring them in, they'd be in handcuffs most of the time, and they would sit down. AJ would come in.
Where?
They would sit down on the one, it's like it's a four-sided weight equipment.
Okay,
And
yeah.
on the one side, it has a seat where
Right.
if you're facing, you can do the pull down.
Right,
They would
right.
sit backwards, so pretty much like sitting on a chair, but it was a piece of weight equipment. They would sit there with the handcuffs. At that point, AJ would come back. There would be another employee, which would sometimes be myself. If it was a female, there was always another female back there. AJ would go in and talk to them, tell them whatever the situation was, why they got brought in based on that situation, whether it's their address or you're on a forfeiture or whatever it would be. Once AJ would make sure that they're okay, and they're not going to scream and fight and do whatever some of these crazy people do. He would,
Why? What were they saying? They wanted to go to jail, or they wanted
no,
to be
they don't
released?
want to go to jail. That's the
Okay.
problem. They know they're going to jail. Because they
But they
broke
don't know
the
that.
contract. Well,
Because they never did.
I've got to assume
Go ahead.
that they knew that. I mean, I don't know though.
All right.
So they'd be brought in. AJ would discuss with them whatever needed to be done. If they were good to go, they're not gonna, punch anybody or knock anybody out. AJ would tell Dave to take the handcuffs off. They would move up to the middle office where they would sit down.
Middle office is where.
The middle office, I call it it's a second office. It's just because it's in the middle of the building. The office that you go into right after you exit the gym from the back.
Okay, got it.
They would go up there and then they would talk to whoever was working in the forfeiture department at that time, which may be Ray, maybe they talked to Josephina, maybe they would.
So that was the purpose of that office at the very back of the room.
The back office was the manager's office in the forfeiture department and then the court
Got it.
area. And all the bail bonds and all the collections
Up
were
front.
handled up front.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt
They
you.
would get brought in, and then once the handcuffs were removed, they would sit there, they would discuss what was ever. We didn't always lock the door, there were situations, I know there was one where, and I think that's one of the big ones, where the gentleman was on a fake ID or whatever, like he wasn't a citizen. So that's why the door got locked then, because, obviously we don't want to lose this guy, we need, and I believe the cops were called at that situation, and they did come out.
You're thinking of Esteban Martinez, or was that Alicia Gutierrez?
I think they're the same people,
Yeah,
they're
right.
together,
They
one's
brought
the
it
girlfriend
together.
for the
They brought it
boyfriend.
together, that's what you're talking
Girlfriend for the
about?
boyfriend, yeah.
If you can remember
I
names.
can't that's the problem, I
Okay.
have a hard time with names.
Go ahead.
So what happened with that one again?
I do, they came in and then he was sitting there and I remember that there was an issue with him not being a citizen and I don't know exactly what was supposed to happen or what they were trying to do to fix the situation with this guy, but I know the girlfriend got extremely mad or whatever and got really upset, and then I think AJ tried to talk to her and she wasn't having it, so she wanted to leave, so I let her out. I never told her at any time she couldn't leave the building. I unlocked, she left the building, she was talking out front, and then the cop showed up and something got said there. AJ spoke to the cop, to the cop that came
Well, I
out
think
or something.
AJ told Martinez that, and I think his exact quote is he wasn't gonna have some bitch tell me how to run my business, or something similar to that.
Yeah, I don't remember what was exactly said,
Go ahead.
but I do remember vaguely the situation, but I know that she was really mad because it was her boyfriend. She thought he was going to get deported, and I mean,
So her statement was a little different.
Okay.
And so you're saying that her statement is not the way you remember it. You remember it as she wanted to leave and she was allowed to leave.
Yes, absolutely.
Because her statement is that basically the doors were locked on her. She couldn't leave. She was told she couldn't leave. In fact, at one point she was threatened with jail if she didn't start coming up with money. And
But you didn't say that.
No,
somebody
no.
pointed a taser at her.
Absolutely not. I don't even know who would have had.
So you're saying that her version is not the way you remember
Is
that?
not all true. No, I don't remember a taser ever being pulled on anybody because I'm pretty sure I would remember something that specific.
That you're aware of.
Yes,
Do you-
that I'm aware of. That I'm aware
Yes.
of. Yes.
May I add one thing?
Yes.
Yeah. From my reading of the discovery, the responding officer's time frame was much shorter through dispatch than she was relating to that responding
Okay.
officer.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah, I
So,
I
so,
think
so
she-
outside of any discrepancies, what she does have accurate is that you were there, AJ was there, AJ was the one that was trying to talk with this gal, and the door was locked. But at some point, you unlocked the door and she was able to go outside.
Oh yeah, she wanted to leave and I was told to open the door. There was no question.
AJ told you to open the door.
I don't know who, I don't know if I was necessarily told, excuse the language. I just know that, I do remember that she wanted to leave and I unlocked the door. I had no point told her that she couldn't leave. There was no reason, she wasn't the defendant.
But why was the door locked in the beginning?
I don't know,
Was that an order that was
I know
given to
that
you,
there
or-
were times when there were defendants that, you know, were in negotiation that the contract hadn't been set in stone and, you know, we weren't sure if they were going back to jail or not and the door was locked. But then on the same.
Didn't you just say this guy wasn't in danger of deportation?
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely a flight risk.
False ID.
Can I ask just a general question, if I'm like a layman or a juror trying to figure this out? Why would these people be taken out of jail to negotiate and not know who they are when you're bailing them?
Well, I mean, that happens all the time. These
Why?
people get booked under aliases and bailed out under aliases.
And
so
you guys
that's
don't
not
do your
some-
homework in advance to know whether they were a flight risk or not?
Well, I mean, on the same token, you know,
Or a further danger to the community?
I mean,
No,
no, I know. I understand what you're getting at, but as
You're a mom, right? You got a 14-year-old, you got a
Yeah,
little
but as
baby.
a-
I've got
as a-
kids. Mr. Hankins has
but as a
kids.
bail agent,
This is
all
all
we know-
about protecting our community at
I
some
know,
point,
but as a
right?
bail agent, there's no discrimination. All we know are the charges that are in black and
But
white.
as a bail agent, don't you have a responsibility to say, I know who I'm bailing before they actually get bailed
You'd
out?
like to think so, but in that case, then there would be discrimination against bailing people out. I mean,
There is none. It's simply
But
whether or
there's-
not I know who these people are and whether or not I feel they're capable of fulfilling this
because
contract.
everybody has the right to bail. I mean, that's kind of, you can't say that we have to, you know, if Joe calls in and says, I want to bail out, that I'm supposed to go, okay, well, he's in there for kidnapping and theft and his
No, but
family.
aren't you supposed to say, are you really Joe? And is
Well,
your
of
name
course,
such and such?
but
Do you
this
really
guy-
have a
but
valid
this
social security
gentleman-
number?
this-
And do you X, Y,
But
and
see,
Z?
but we don't have the sources to
Okay.
confirm social security
Okay.
numbers and stuff. I mean, I do understand what you're getting at, but that's just not how the bail industry is built. I mean, I'd be surprised if you can find an agent anybody.
You know, you're right. To some degree, you know, when you look at the federal system, when they have their bail systems down there, I mean, these people are brought before court. Pretrial services usually goes through and does an extensive review of these people before the judge allows them to make bail. And then generally on the federal side, the bond issue is really not a bond. They're putting property down, they're putting collateral down, and the judge is given stern admonitions to these individuals as to what happens if they don't show back up in his court or her court. Here in the state system, it's not quite like that. So I understand what you're saying with the inconsistencies between the courts and with our sense of justice. But nevertheless, from our perspective, as just being a lay person, being the average Joe that I am, I just want to know why this stuff is taking place in my county.
Just because you can't be sure that these people, I mean, you see it all the time where, I mean, you know, and not to say, well, you do it too, but, you know, the jail books these people under aliases, they bail out under aliases, they go to court under alias, and you don't realize till, you know, 2 years later when they're booked that the whole time that's not even really who they are. I mean, there's been other issues where we had a sister that went to jail with her sister's
sister's
ID.
name, right, it
You know, I
happens.
mean, it happens, and we as bail bondsmen don't have the access to, you know, let me run your social security number real quick.
Sure.
And even still, if we did have the access, then would everybody have the right to bail? Then it would be discrimination. Then bail companies would pick and choose. So if they don't like you, then nobody's gonna bail you out. That doesn't seem fair.
Well, not only that, but, you know, quite frankly, when the people do have money to make bail, most of the bail bondsmen are in line to get that and to make that bail.
Fortunately, that's how it is. I mean, everybody needs to make money at their job.
That's.
All we can hope is, you
And I
know,
think at the bottom line, and this, when all this is over and done with this, that was the bottom line, Janelle, as to why all this was happening and taking place. Because unfortunately, it is all about greed. It is all about money in this case. How much money is going to be taken out of the buff funds, if we can keep the surety happy with, you know, the lack of the forfeitures coming our way, being the ultimate in this industry, and I think that's where the problem is. And quite frankly, after listening to what you had to say and your reasoning behind things, it sounds as if you were just a pawn. You were being used. You were being placed where you needed to be placed because you were that upright or that believable person. Except for when you have some of those documents that Mr. Bernstein was talking about, then it does question your integrity. But at the same time, we're getting this idea and we understand why you did what you did. I have some questions regarding the locking of the front door, these guys handcuffed to the weight equipment, this Dennis Whitfield. You know, and we can go through this and we can dissect it and spend probably the next day still talking about this.
And you know, and to be honest, just to round it all up,
what's the bottom line here, Janelle? These guys were actually being sweat to call, to dial for dollars.
But that's not always the situation. It's hard because I don't want to paint the picture like, you know, you're right, this was also horrible, because it wasn't. There were lots of good situations. You know, there were a lot of people.
Hey, let me get you a job in order for you to pay me back, or?
Well, no, not necessarily. But you know, there were a lot of renegotiations where we realized that, you know, when you bailed out, you had money, and now you don't. Well, let's renegotiate it and, you know, pay $1 a month, whatever you need to do so you can stay on bill. There were a lot of positive things that came out of this, and you know, I'm sure that you guys have found your handful of negative ones, but you know, I really honestly in my heart don't believe that anything that was done was done with the intention of being mean or
except for on these particular occasions that we brought up, where you're handcuffing dudes to weight benches or poles.
But you know, for me, from my point of view, that's just how it was done, and
that's business.
And you know, I don't know any better.
That's business, or that's AJ doing what AJ does.
But then again, you know, if you want to go back to the hearsay, you know, I've had clients.
This is not hearsay.
Well, no, okay. Well, I'm just saying from what I've said earlier about, you know, people talking about other people. You know, I mean, I've had clients that I bailed out that said that, you know, that Joanna has sexually harassed them, or that Joanna has a cell in her building. You know, I mean, crazy stuff like that. You know, so I mean, when you hear stuff like that, and then you look at what's going on, you know, it doesn't look bad, you know, and I guess the way I perceived it was that he wasn't sweating these people, you know, you're just talking to them, you know, I mean,
But you know, even you said, you know, he was argumentative with them. There were yelling matches.
There were times when voices was raised, yes.
And so it's hardly, you know, sitting down and having a cup of coffee with Mr. Hankins discussing the weather and how the Giants did last night.
Didn't play last night.
That's true.
You're already up on that, huh?
Sorry, I know you're
That's okay.
You know,
getting back to the court pickups.
Okay.
Who determined who came in?
It wasn't necessarily that anybody determined, it was just based on each client. So if... Who
made up the lists that were given to the employees to look for the people?
I usually prepared the list based on if they owed, or if they needed to be talked to about their address, or if their phone number wasn't working, or something like that. The courthouse was just kind of that. I mean,
that was kind of your domain.
They're going to go to court.
The way I understand it, and correct me if I have it wrong, David Nelson went out and did like the house pickups.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Who told David Nelson to go to this particular house to pick up this particular person?
It would be AJ would have been the one that decided that who needed to get dealt with, and then I would give the information to
AJ would tell you, okay, David needs to go.
Yeah,
pick
because
up this
typically
guy.
The way it worked was I would realize there's a problem with somebody. I would document it on the file. You know, this is what the issue is with this person. I would give the file to AJ, then AJ would tell me, based on whatever the problem was, that this is the next step.
Was that generally done in person, or was that sometimes done
a lot of times it was
sticky
notes on the files?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
There was AJ wasn't really in the office for the most part. He would come in and check files, and then we would go from the files depending on what needed to do accordingly.
But AJ was always on top of everything.
For the most part, he kept up with the files that we provided him. Yes.
Because I think in one of your statements is that you were second in command, but you know AJ was.
I needed to get approval first. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So on the court pickups, you would create the list of who had problems or issues or who needed.
It wasn't necessarily like a list that I prepared just for that reason. It would be because, like I said, you know, I'd be going through files, and then these people would have problems, and then AJ would say, okay, well, you know, this person, you know, just keep trying to call this person or get a hold of this person at the courthouse. Then when their court date came up, then we had a court book with everybody's court dates so that we could call the day ahead, remind them they had court. And then we would tell the people, you know, make sure these people are in court. And then if there was an issue with anybody that was in court that day, then we would let them know, hey, you know, per the file, we need to talk to them about this. You know, please ask them to come back, or, you know.
And that's how Montanez and Gutierrez ended up getting from the courthouse to AJ's. They were driven back by an employee. Was that yourself? Do you remember?
I don't remember picking Montanez up. I did very few.
Pickups.
I did very few pickups.
You
of
basically
people going
just
back with me.
provided the lists.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I kind of want to move on from that.
Okay.
How did you guys figure out that posting a second bail bond would restart the forfeiture process?
The rewrite?
The rewrite of the bail bonds.
Originally, how I remember how the rewrite came up was that we were doing reinstatement letters on bonds. Then the surety company told us that there are some situations where we can't reinstate the bond. We have to actually rewrite the bond, like it has to be a whole new bond.
Okay.
So, and that came up, I believe, originally because there was an issue where somebody had got arrested and then their warrant had added like another $500, so we had a 30 to reinstate the old bail and then post another bond for $500, or how do we do that? And then they had told us, you just rewrite the bond, you'll exonerate the old bond when you rewrite the new bond. And I believe it was the surety company that explained that to us, because until then,
Who did you talk to at the surety company?
I didn't personally. I believe it was AJ who personally talked to somebody at the surety, and then it just got passed down that this was the new procedure, this is how we needed to handle it.
Okay.
Janelle, you were with AJ when he testified on the Ochoa case that Miss Mims had, and it says that you were there with him, and I think you heard AJ say that this was, in his own words, it was a gimmick. He says that was the gimmick for him, is to try to get him there without having to try to go round him up, because he's obviously seriously under the influence, and certainly I don't need any problems. AJ went on to testify that the double bond alleviated the warrant, cleared the warrant in the system. Let me go on. It exonerated the bond. And so out of AJ's own mouth, he says that this double bond or this rewrite process was simply a gimmick. And what John's asking is, did you come up with that plan to form this gimmick to what the judges... Let me tell you what the judge later said. Let me quote from the judge, and even the 5th Appellate District says...
Oh, I read that, yeah.
The judge says that this was... the judge saying that the bondsman never informed the clerk of this fact, that it was deceptive, that it was a replacement, that it was simply to give the bondsman extra time to locate the defendant. It attempted to mislead the court and subvert the actual forfeiture process, that it was an intentional act to conceal the fact that the defendant had never been arrested, and Judge McFadden went one step further to say this was outright fraud and an intentional act to deceive by leading the court clerk to believe the defendant was in custody, and he never was. Now, what the 5th Appellate District says is they said this was a gimmick, straight from A.J. Pontillo's mouth, that it was defraud in circumventing the 185-day period by starting a new clock for the forfeiture purposes on the second bond. And then the 5th Appellate District said this was deceptive in that it led the court to believe that the defendant was in custody and he wasn't. And then the 5th Appellate said it wasn't legal. The second bond did not satisfy the statutory and legal requirements of release from custody and notice. And then the Court of Appeals said we do not condone or approve of the Bail Agents Act. So Janelle, when I'm asking you these questions, this was a gimmick, this was a lie, this was complete deception and fraud that was perpetrated on our courts. Did you do this? Did you come up with this? Or was this AJ's doing?
No, I didn't come up with the idea.
So when you're talking about the surety telling you guys this is a bunch of crap. The surety is not going to tell you to commit these lies and acts and deceptions and fraud.
The surety said to come in and do all the rewrites, but I'm saying that originally where we learned of the rewrites, that's how it...
Who formulated this process then, Janelle, to create what you just heard these judges say?
I don't know.
Who formulated this
AJ
process?
said we could...
AJ
told
said
me to rewrite some of the bonds.
Okay, I want to get into that. Okay, Baruta and Ochoa, those are two names you probably remember from prelim and your charging documents and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And not only did AJ say, Janelle, sorry to interrupt you, John, but you actually went to the courthouse and you filed those bonds, did you not?
Yes, I filed the bonds, but at no time did I ever tell the clerk that I had the defendant in custody.
I'm not saying you did.
Yeah.
No, but you
never-
didn't, but at no time did you tell the court that he wasn't in custody.
But it wasn't asked either. See, that's the whole thing, is these are things that I don't know this, I just know.
Let me ask you this, how many bonds did you write? And I realized that as it got along, you wrote more than none.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many?
I don't have all that piece.
In 08, you said you didn't
have
write
those
very many
pieces.
bonds at all, just a few.
But-
okay.
but they're all the
As
physical
time
district.
went on, did you start writing more, or were you still the office manager?
I was still the office manager. I wrote bonds here and there when needed, but I didn't really start writing bail until like the last couple years that we were in business, like once there were no other agents. That's pretty much when I started writing bail. After the raid is pretty much when
After the first or second?
the first one is
Or
when,
actually for the third?
yeah, the agents
Because
kind of
it goes, Ken
dissipated.
Tam's was the first, his was the second, mine was the third.
Yeah, so after that, then the agents started dissipating, and that's when I started writing more bail.
Okay, so in this case of Ochoa and Baruga,
Okay.
you posted second bail bonds on these cases. Obviously, I came back in May of 11, I believe it was, and I served a search warrant, and I collected all the,
Okay.
I collected all the, that was the last one that I did, and we collected all the files.
Okay.
Those specific files. You remember that, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you filled out the paperwork, Mr. Ochoa didn't sign the paperwork. Why is that?
Because he wasn't present.
Okay, so you didn't have him, you didn't know where he was.
They were looking for him, but I didn't have
Okay.
him currently.
Did you think that maybe that was kind of weird?
No,
I'm assuming that AJ told you to fill out a new bond.
Yeah, I really didn't, because I mean,
At whose direction did you do that, Janelle?
At AJ's.
Okay, so AJ directed you, hey, fill out a new bond, take it down to the courthouse, give it to the court clerk. Okay.
And you never saw this individual in custody at any time, and you never saw this individual provide any additional premium to AJ or your business? Okay.
Um,
And this was at AJ's direction?
Okay,
Yeah, AJ would have been the one to.
No, AJ, we're not guessing here.
No,
Who told you,
AJ told,
Janelle?
AJ was the one that told me to
Okay.
write it, yeah.
okay, so you didn't collect any money personally in this, you didn't, from
No.
Mr. Ochoa, because you guys didn't know where he
No.
was, quite frankly. And he wasn't in law enforcement custody, he wasn't over at the jail, you didn't have to run a copy down to the jail to post bail for him?
No.
Okay. Well, why didn't you guys just do a reinstatement letter?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but a reinstatement letter, the defendant has to take it to the courthouse.
Oh God, I barely remember how things work. Yeah, when we did a reinstatement, we would fill it out, we would give the defendant the copy. The defendant would have to take it to their public defender or their lawyer. They couldn't take it directly to the courthouse.
Oh, okay.
Because if they
But
didn't,
it gets introduced through the court system
Yeah.
with the defendant, and the judge says, okay, yeah, sure, or no, or whatever.
Garbage was happening in the building.
So basically, there was no way to give him a reinstatement letter because quite frankly, you didn't know where he was.
I didn't know.
Okay. And then on the power form, which is the multiple part form that you.
The actual bail bond, okay. Or no,
Well, I
that's
don't think it is the
the
actual.
bail bond is the white part and and the power.
The power,
I get what you're
the
talking
serialized one.
Okay, yes, exactly.
There's a blue sheet. Do you remember who the blue sheet gets given to?
The blue sheet goes to the cosigner. And
Okay.
then the defendant gets the middle white sheet that has their court date on it.
Okay, so in this case, there was a blue sheet, so there was in the file that when we took the file, so you had nobody to give it to because you just
Nobody.
filled it out and took it,
Sure.
okay?
Yes.
You didn't figure it out that you could post a bail bond like that, is what you're saying?
No, it wasn't like
You were
one day we.
directed to.
Yeah, originally how it came up was because it was related to the reinstatements. Like it came up originally because we couldn't reinstate certain bonds, and we were told that that's what a rewrite was for, so that we could essentially post bail on a case that.
Keep going, be
couldn't-
honest, Janelle.
No, we could post bail.
You're
on-
going in the right direction.
No, we could post bail on a case that couldn't be reinstated. Originally, that's what a rewrite was for.
But
Then through we had one where there was a client where we couldn't find the client, And the co-signer was present this time, and we did rewrite the bond. And we did it so that the co-signer would have time to allow us to find, because the co-signer came in and said, hey, I know where he's at, I just need more time.
Which case was that?
I
Warren?
I can't remember which one, I just
Is
know
that
that.
Warren or Baruta?
It wasn't.
I don't know names.
We went through and looked at them. We
Yeah,
pulled all
I-
these double bonds and we saw.
I know, I don't
we
wanna
saw-
say the wrong name, I'm trying to be truthful here, I'm
According to
just saying.
AJ's word, we did see the gimmick.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I know that there was an instance where we did it, where there was a co-signer, and the co-signer said we just need more time, so that was the reason we posted the bond, because the co-signer was there, we were gonna find him, we said, hey, look, new bond, they have to be here by this court date. So yeah, there were times when I guess essentially you can say it was used as a time extension.
Okay, so for Ochoa though, you didn't know where he was, and basically it got filed because AJ told you to.
Yes.
Ultimately,
True statement.
what happened when it got filed?
You mean the process of me taking it down to the
Well,
courthouse?
you took it down and gave it to the court.
Yeah, I took it.
Like you said, you
I
didn't
filled it
tell-
out, just like you would any other bond, and I took it to the courthouse, and I filed it just as you would file any other bond in the courthouse, because we had filed bonds at the courthouse before for people that were in court and they needed the bond filed so they could go take it to the courtroom so that they wouldn't get remanded, or if they were in custody and going to court that day, they would allow us to post the bond at the courthouse.
Which Ochoa was none of this.
No, he wasn't any of that, but was the process. That's why the courthouse took the bond, because they were still in the practice of taking bonds at that time.
And as you know, later on, the court stopped that practice.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
Krytesser. Is that Thomas Krytesser?
I
Is
don't
that?
recall that name.
Patty Ramos posted a second bond on that case as well.
Okay.
That was one of the, have you read my search warrant?
You know, I haven't been through a lot of
Okay.
this stuff in a while. so
That was why we ended up at Mark Davis's house, or part of the reason.
Okay.
Patty Ramos told me basically the same thing. I don't know why, but AJ told me to go down there and post the bail bond, and I did. Do you have any information in addition to that, or?
No.
So Patty was in the same situation as Janelle was in.
Patty doesn't even recall posting it. She just basically said, I don't know why I would have posted that, because, and then when I explained to her, she sees the reason why, because basically you get an extra 180 days.
And that's what Janelle basically said.
Right, so, and she was told by what she assumes is AJ, because she had no connection to the defendant. The blue sheet is still in the file.
Mhm.
She doesn't know why.
Just did mostly, yeah, we would never do anything based on a connection to the defendant.
I'm gonna take these back, 'cause I don't think unless you.
Did you want to, did Mr. Higgins have a chance to look at that?
Oh, if you wanna look at them, I mean,
He's been
they're in there.
down the bait.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
usually what I do.
Yeah,
Janelle, while we have a few extra minutes while you're going through your cases, I'm sure you probably got some more bond. Go ahead.
well, I do have a couple of questions, and I wanna get into this with you. AJ's not the most honest guy I've ever known, I would say. At least in my opinion in dealings with them. There was a couple of incidents. There was one with Steve here. After his search warrant, AJ made statements that he was looking down your shirt, stuff like that.
Where did all that originate from,
Well,
Janelle?
it
You know that to be
originated-
false.
It originated, sir, because when you watch the cameras.
No, I don't want to hear about all the speculation. I
No,
was there with you. You know that it never
what
happened.
happened was you did make me feel uncomfortable. I will be honest with that. It was a personal space thing.
Okay.
You know, obviously I don't know.
But you're
you.
saying I looked
It's
down
on-
your shirt?
It did appear to me to be that way, honestly.
I was looking down your shirt, Janelle.
It did appear to me to be that way. I'm sorry. I'm
So-
sorry if you weren't. But at the time it did appear to feel that way to me. And I'm sorry if it's.
Well, you know, if that's your perception, then I'm fine with that. But if you're making that up to try to smut me up or make this personal,
No,
in
it was
some
my
way, shape, or
perception,
form,
and then
did you ever articulate that to me?
I'm not the one that took it out. I had the feelings. I felt awkward about it, and then.
Did you say something to me?
AJ had other people working there that blew it way out of proportion.
Who are those
Videos-
other people?
Robert Stanford was working there, and it
Right.
got blown way out of proportion, and I know the video's on YouTube, and I was upset about it because I did feel uncomfortable, and then it was now the whole world can see me feel uncomfortable. But, you know, I mean,
You understand the purpose of why I had to be kind of in your space while going through that computer
Just
process?
ultimately, it was just an uncomfortable situation all around.
I completely agree.
And it got.
I never wanted to be in your business any more than you probably wanted me
And it
there.
felt uncomfortable.
But for you or for anybody to say that this was for sexual gratification on my part is completely out of line.
No, I won't say that it was.
Completely.
I won't say that it was.
And
for
then, when you're
sexual.
talking about him wanting to make things personal, we're trying to do our job, and yet we're getting called steroid users or juice monsters or whatever they're wanting to call us. And then to throw this in there, Janelle, that this is some form of sexual gratification on me or the part of anybody else that was there, completely
But that's
improper.
that's not something that I personally.
Well, that's what he's asking. Whose
Yeah.
idea was this? See, what happens, Janelle, is with this case and with other cases dealing with AJ and Frank Carson and these types of individuals, is that there's a continual, I would say, an interference or an obstruction into the investigation by these individuals trying to distract from the facts and trying to smut up people or ruin reputations because they can't deal with the facts of the investigation. So what my partner's asking is, because this is an ongoing kind of conspiracy with these individuals to do this, and not just this case, but in other cases, what do you know about that? If you said it made you feel uncomfortable, but you didn't tell me, who did you tell?
I just discussed it in the office.
With AJ, with Robert Stanford, with Frank Carson?
No, not with Frank Carson.
Okay, how did this-
Probably AJ and Robert Stanford, and then Robert Stanford was real gung-ho on, I mean, I'm sure you guys have read, he's like an avid Modesto V blogger, and, he just found a story and ran with it, and I just sat back and went with it, honestly, I mean, had I...
But we talked after that. You called me a couple times to discuss bail matters, and you never said anything over the phone like, hey,
Because it got blown out of proportion. It did, and I let it happen. I was angry at the time, and I let it happen, and
Well, I don't sense an apology, but at the same time, I'm going to forgive you because it was your perception, and it sounds like it wasn't meant out of malice or ill will, but it got blown out of proportion by other individuals. And those other individuals may in fact have some type of animosity toward me to want to make this personal because of my effectiveness in doing my job.
And they have a different agenda.
And they have a different agenda altogether. I am simply about finding the truth of things. If you come to me in emotion and you say, I lied, I want to know that. If you come to me and say that I did something improper and I want to know about that. This is not just about Steve Jacobson doing an investigation. I represent the people of Stanislaus County. That was my whole business in this bail bond issue was to begin with, is that, and it quite frankly, like I was telling Mr. Hankins a few minutes ago, it opened up my eyes to a level of corruption that I've never seen. And and I applaud Dave Harris and I applaud Alice Mims in wanting to turn this ship around and to get there to be some liabilities on these bonds, to prosecute people that are filing fraudulent and fictitious and perjurious documents with the court. That distracts and takes away from the whole integrity of our process. This is not about Steve Jacobson being juice monster or whatever you want to call me or whatever names you want to deal. They filed a complaint against this guy here for some money missing from his business. All of that is completely improper and it's a lie straight out from the gates of hell, I would say.
Yeah, all I can say to that is,
You know that AJ filed a complaint with the Department of Insurance that we stole $17,000 and some
during the
change.
raid where the money
in
box
last-
disappeared, yeah.
There was supposedly a money box that disappeared, okay. Was that true?
The money was missing. He did have a little safe deposit box that he had money in, and there was no money there after the raid.
So $17,000 just disappeared.
Those are the facts, and he did have an investigator that came in and
Right,
looked
it
and did whatever.
was an
and-
investigation,
Yeah,
which
so-
ended up,
I don't know if he necessarily pointed you out as the culprit, but during that raid, there was a safety deposit box there, and he did say there was money in it, and prior to
But this is
that,
AJ saying that there was money in it. No one else saw the money in that money box?
he did keep he kept amounts of money that were cash on hand at the business.
$17,000 worth?
I guess, if that's.
So we're talking about,
Well, okay, but
I don't necessarily care.
I didn't know.
Do you have $17,000
I
in
didn't
your
personally.
pocket?
I
don't
know
have
that I know
$17,000
the
in my
box is
pocket.
there. I've seen the
Okay,
box.
so
I know
there-
that that's there.
okay.
But I didn't personally see the money that was inside it. No, I didn't. So I can't. I can't personally.
tell me at least this, because I was at the search warrant, so I got kind of an idea of where I was. But I'm not sure, I never saw the money box, so I don't know where.
It was upstairs in his personal area in the apartment.
Okay, well, I just was briefly up there wasn't much there.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't even know. I just know he said the money was missing, it was gone, so he filed the claim as he felt he needed to, and then that.
So this was AJ's doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you have a part in that?
No.
Did you provide a statement to anybody from the Department of Insurance or an investigator
Yeah,
regarding
not
that?
that I knew of. I don't think so. I just vaguely remember that it was a darker gentleman that came, and that was it.
Right. Okay. Okay, so you never saw the money, but you never not saw the money.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know the box was there, and
you knew there was a box. How much money was in there is beyond.
I never personally saw it. No.
Okay.
Who's next?
Did you have any other, I'm
I think
kind of
I'm-
finished up here. I just had some last questions for Janelle.
Oh,
You know that individual?
that's Frank Carson.
Do you know this individual here? Robert Woody? You guys bailed him out back in 2008.
He doesn't look familiar to me now. I can't say that I do.
Do you know this individual here? And this individual? They're actually brothers. Daljeep and Baljeep Atwal?
I can't say that I personally did anything with them. He looks vaguely familiar, but just probably because he kind of looks
I
similar
was
to
gonna
some
say
other
the same
people.
thing about
The Atwal
Yeah,
brothers?
so, but I can't say that I know any of these people by name.
So you don't know him, Robert Woody, by name, or his face doesn't look familiar as a prior client of AJ bail bonds? This was back in 2008 during your time frame there.
Yeah, I honestly can't say that his face rings a bell to me.
Never heard any discussions there with, at the business regarding Robert Woody, Frank Carson, discussing anything about any business at all? You ever hear the name Corey Kaufman come up?
No, not at all. Frank Carson never really hung around our office when we were doing the bail bond.
Did you ever hear Frank Carson come in to AJ bail bonds and tell AJ that he wasn't going to be able to represent him because he felt he was going to be arrested?
The only time that Frank Carson, like I remember when Frank Carson got involved is after the initial raid, or the raid when you came in,
Right.
and that's when AJ started talking to Frank.
What did he say?
Well, just about complaints, like, what's going on, why is this happening, that he had already tried to go and talk to the sheriff, and that, this is ridiculous, and, Carson kind of had background with you guys because he's already worked with you guys on other cases, and AJ had a federal attorney that was helping when we thought it was going to be a federal case, but wasn't really helping with anything locally with the harassment that AJ felt was going on as far as, like the raids and you guys talking to people. So that's when he brought Carson in so that we could try to resolve something before it got to all this. And Carson was supposed to, he just told him basically about the circumstances that you had come in, you took everything, and, Carson was trying to help since Carson had some background originally when some people had stopped David and stuff. So when it all kind of started happening, AJ had kind of talked to Carson about it because, Carson knows Modesto, he knows what's going on around here. So that's as far as it, but as far as any personal business with Carson, they never talked about anything as far as personal with Carson. Like, we never had any personal relationship with him or anything, and yeah, there was never anything like that.
To your knowledge.
Yeah, to my knowledge, of course, yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'll go back into that, but since I have this out here, this is a posting by Stanford, and he says that on January 29th at about 3:15, I served in opposition for the defendant from county council. Do you remember that when I came into the office and you were talking about the cameras that they had for the business and the security and the surveillance cameras picked me up by serving county council's opposition to AJ? Do you remember that? And then like a day or two later, I served a search warrant there at the business.
I remember when you came in for the search warrant, but
Okay.
I don't recall
The surveillance cameras and the systems that you remember at the business, they were pretty clear, right? I mean, according to Stanford, they had me identified
Yeah,
the
they're
day
pretty clear.
prior
You
when
can zoom in.
you can
yeah,
zoom
to
in and
some
kind of
extent.
see who the person is that's
Yeah,
coming in,
yeah.
into the front office there with the camera and the surveillance systems?
Mhm.
Okay. Because when I interviewed AJ the day of the search warrant, he was already aware of me. He already knew who I was. He said, oh, okay, I was waiting for this. It was kind of odd that you served county council's opposition personally to us instead of, it being sent to a process server or in the mail.
Okay.
So he goes, that was kind of a red flag that I figured something was coming or something was awry here.
Okay.
And I just simply asked, if you kind of knew all of this stuff, was this information still happening with these motions, or at some point did everything start to get tightened up now that, there was a criminal investigation going at the same time that these civil investigations were going over these motions?
I just think, honestly, I don't even think we knew that there was an investigation going on. I mean, I think that once, we went to the feds and, I got subpoenaed and went up there and talked to them and then nothing ever came of that. I think that we never thought that there was a massive, AJ might have, I can't say what he was thinking, but I never thought that there was a massive investigation. I thought, okay, well, they thought something was going wrong, went to the feds, realized, okay, it's not what they think it is, and now they're just having specific situations with these motions. Like that's really honestly all I thought was going on. In which case I figured, well, then, then they need to get in touch with Mark Davis and find out what's going on, and, we need to figure out what the issue is, because, you were pulling
Right.
files that had to do with motions, and,
Right.
That's really all we thought was going on. I don't remember, I can't state to you any time where there was like one day when we were just like, one big change, like we're not doing this anymore, but we're gonna do this. There was never really anything that was
But as my
dramatic.
partner just articulated, there were changes. There were the rewrites or the double bonds, and then there were times in which it was just a flat-out lie about receiving the forfeiture notices, and then beyond that, then it was attacking the summary judgments. From our perspective, during the timeline, and when you're looking at it in the investigation, is that there were changes within the business.
But then on the same token, there was just, all the time there was so much going on. I don't think it ever felt to me like there was a big change, because things were changing all the time. I'm sure you're aware, like with our courthouse, when we had people at the courthouse, they had issues with what they were wearing and issues with where they were sitting and stuff, and we were always changing. Well, then we'll take AJs off their shirt because we don't want to be doing that, and we'll tell them not to talk to people while they're in the courtroom, and we were constantly evolving all the time. So I don't think it ever really felt like just because of one situation that we did one change.
But do you see the boldness from our perspective of once we catch on to a particular gimmick, I'm going to use AJ's words himself,
Okay.
once we catch on to a particular lie or a gimmick and we shut that avenue down, it seemed like it just kind of shifted to something else that was unethical and untruthful. And so what my partner is asking is, in this transition of this evolution or this evolving process that you're talking about, who is the one that is directing those changes within the business? Is it you?
Well, I would say it had to be AJ. It was his business. Ultimately, regardless of what I wanted to do, it would all go back to AJ, and AJ would have final call.
He had
on how things work.
the final say on all of this.
Yeah, it was his
and when
business.
it comes to anything regarding sweating these guys inside of the business or anything else like that, that's AJ's business. And if it came to anything with emotions, that's Mark Davis's business.
Yeah,
You were saying,
safe to
hey,
say
I
that.
was the right-hand person, as AJ explained. However, I wasn't involved in either.
I didn't make calls on either. I wasn't the shot caller on either end. I was, the follow-througher, for lack of better
Right,
terms.
right.
So.
Den mother.
Yeah, you were the one that was being directed to file this double bond stuff down at the courthouse.
And
You were the one that was being directed. Matter of fact,
And honestly, the
you were
reason-
used all the way through this process, even up and past Stanford and AJ, and exploiting you and your uncomfortableness of me being there. You were used all the way through this process, and you now realize and understand that.
To some extent, yeah.
Now, when we leave here today, is this something where you're going to have a casual relationship with AJ and Stanford and Mark Davis
I don't talk to Stanford or Mark
and the rest
Davis,
of these guys?
But I will be honest with you, AJ's kids are a big part of my life, and
Great.
and they're my family.
Right.
And AJ knows that,
Have you talked to him about what you're doing here today?
he knows that I've decided to cooperate with you guys, and
What did he say?
he said that's fine. I have to do what's best for me. He understands.
Okay.
He wants to go through, and AJ feels that he knows what's right, and he needs to say what he needs to say in court to you guys, and he wants to fight it, and and it is what it is, and that's his prerogative. But I know that
It is.
and I know that. But I just know that really where I stand is, am I guilty of these crimes? Absolutely not, absolutely not. But I want to play it safe because I have a family. I'm concerned about AJ's children as well, and I need to do.
But you're not just playing it safe. You believe that there's a factual basis.
I believe that
on
you
those
guys
charges.
need to know the truth, and if I can provide that, then it's the truth, and you guys will do what you need to do with it. But that's all that I can do is tell you guys the truth, as I have from the beginning. I have no reason to lie.
But see, the way that I'm sensing this, and I don't know if Mr. Hankins or John is as well, is that I'm kind of sensing you wanting to kind of play both sides here. I'm kind of sensing that you want to do the right thing, but you're going to direct us to AG if there's questions regarding the sweating, and you're going to kind of direct us to Mark Davis.
No, I mean,
But is that saying that I just don't know anything about anything?
No,
or I'm
no,
just-
I know. I mean, I'm telling you guys what I know, but for the majority, I'm not the thinker of these ideas. I don't want to say anything that could come across as I'm not telling the truth. So if I feel like I can't give you the answer to your question, I'm just directing you to where you should get it. I mean, and when I'm up on the stand, you guys are going to ask me all these questions, and I'm going to tell you the truth. And if it hurts AJ, then it hurts AJ. But I have to tell the truth, and he knows that.
My view,
And I've told and that's where I stand.
my view on the right is it's the end of the age of innocence, frankly.
I'm not a kid anymore. This case started and I was young and
Right.
and careless and having a great time, and I'm 30 years old now and I'm a mom, and
And you're seeing,
this is ridiculous,
Yeah,
and
you're right.
it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be done, and the appropriate parties need to take the appropriate crimes, and and that's how I feel. I'm not.
they need to answer for what
Yes,
they did.
and that's just.
You're in agreement with that?
Yes, and that's where I stand for Mark Davis. I'm not going to take the fall and take the blame for these babies that were your motion. You need to stand up and you need to take what you got. And honestly, if he would have told the truth at a federal level, we probably wouldn't even have all these issues. So, that's where he stands with that. And as far as all this kidnapping and extortion stuff, do I think it was kidnapping and extortion? No. Do I see why you guys think it is?
Yes.
So, but that's something that AJ needs to deal with, and I'm not saying like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with it, you deal with AJ.
No, but you saw
I'll
and you
tell you
witnessed.
what I can tell you to the best of my
You
knowledge.
talked about Whitfield, but I know that Whitfield wasn't the car. That was a separate incident. The car was another guy. All right, so you know that there are other people that you've seen that were handcuffed.
in my old
And you're going to have to be
testimonies are a
truthful,
lot.
and you're going to have to testify regarding
Yeah, most
that.
definitely. And if I've already said it, then it's the truth. It's hard for me to remember now, what I
Don't
remembered back
forget,
in 2008.
We're not the ones who determine what was the truth or what wasn't.
I know, it's the judge.
It's the judge. We're
Now,
just talking to you.
When you come time for trial, all of these documents are going to be introduced into evidence, and you're going to have an opportunity to see all of these documents firsthand. You're going to be able to see the pictures of these individuals, these guys who are chained to the weight bench, and you're going to need to testify truthfully.
As I guarantee you guys that I will.
No sugarcoating. I mean, it is what it is. The door is locked, the door is unlocked.
There's
These people
nothing
are
to lie
handcuffed or
about
not
it. It's
handcuffed.
all in evidence, and basically at this point, it just needs to be explained, and I have the truthful explanations. I mean, if I was there, and and I can remember, then I will tell you the truth. I mean, it's hard right now, like I said, because some of this stuff's from 2008, and
Right.
my brain's not exactly there, but I obviously need to do some reviewing and stuff before trial starts, and that way I'll be more clear with names at least, not just events. But.
I wanted to point out something for Corsby. Corsby is a defendant that basically there was no motion ever filed. However, in reviewing, and if I remember right, there's a lot of different stuff. But what I think is that Corsby never actually had a motion filed. I just located stuff in bond tracker that seems suspicious. And if you could just review from line 15 to line 25, and it's 5745 page.
5745.
5745.
CORSBY?
CORSBIE.
CORSBE.
And basically she's reading my probable cause search warrant.
Archway, contact Mark to follow up on his file. He said he would file a motion that the letter was not sent. We'll pick up the file today.
Now, this is what I took from the form. I don't think that was found in an actual, this was, I think, what was out of the bond tracker.
Okay.
So basically it says, we received the letter,
Mm-hmm.
then you go to AJ,
Mm-hmm.
and then you come back and say, we'll contact Mark, and we'll file a motion that the letter was not sent, and he'll pick up the file.
Yep, because the letter was not sent to me, said that it was not signed, and therefore it was not valid.
But that's not what it says.
That's
says
not
the
what
letter
it
was not
says,
sent.
but that's my state of mind. That's the guise
That's
that
what
I
you
was
were told.
under. Yes.
Okay, but the forfeiture letter obviously was
Yeah,
received.
obviously. I mean, why would I? And that's the whole thing. Is it's so obvious that I wouldn't go through all the work of putting the Post-it notes and stamping the files and putting it in bond tracker to turn around and say I didn't get it. Like that.
Well,
it's
Janelle, hold on. You probably didn't have an understanding that at some point we were going to be getting that information. All right, so there's a level of deception on your part as well. And you just answered that. You stepped up and said, yeah, okay. Earlier you said, I'm a big girl. I put on my pants and I'm stepping up and answering to my culpability here.
Yes, definitely.
All right, you know that there was a level of deception here and you were played. You put that information in. You knew that at some point you knew, you had an understanding that you probably didn't perceive that the police were ever going to get bond tracker notes. All right? You probably didn't perceive the fact that we would actually be getting the original files and looking and seeing the actual forfeiture letters contained within the files. This was just, I keep going back to the gimmick or the lie that AJ said and testified in court. That's exactly what this was. It was fraud, was it not? Janelle, was it fraud?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you guys have any pre-talking about it?
No.
Did you guys discuss it?
No.
Did he
no.
say, hey, we're going to file a false motion, we're going to do this,
No,
we're going to do
I
we're
was
gonna do
told that we're filing this motion because it is not signed, and if it's not signed, then it's not received, then it's not valid. That was the motion. That's what I was signing.
Well, I see it
God
as
honest
his
truth.
greed, and he had his patsy.
That's it.
Yeah.
Did you hear what Mr. Hankins said?
No.
I completely agree with that. That's the bottom line.
I think AJ had his greed, and he had his patsy, meaning you.
Again, you didn't profit from any of the...
Right.
Janelle, you got played. You're in here not necessarily because of your own doings, but because you went along with it. And there has to be a level of culpability. At some point, you have to stand up and be a big woman, just as you have with Mr. Hankins, and you said, this is what I did, this is what I know, I've learned from this, I'm moving on. What we're sensing is that we're not sensing that necessarily from you. It's more of kind of you're kind of torn, and I understand that. You watch
No,
his
I'm
kids.
not torn.
His kids are very close to you.
Well, let me be clear.
We don't want to pierce that relationship.
No, let me be
you know.
clear. We've already had this conversation. I've told him, I've already testified that I'm going to tell the truth. And if it hurts you, it hurts you. And you're going to have to stand on your own too. And do I want to hurt you? No, but I can't lie to help you. So you're going to have to stand up there, and Carson's going to cross-reference, and you guys are going to beat the shit out of me, I'm sure, with questions.
But you're going to be truthful.
But I'm going to be truthful, and I'm going to sit there because I need to do what's right, and I need to be done with this. Because ultimately, that's all you guys ever wanted anyways. And I know that. I stuck around. I was in the position of know-all, and that's why I got arrested. That's why I'm part of this case. I knew that from the beginning. I knew I was going to be sitting here. I knew that this is what you guys wanted. And I'll provide.
What is it that we wanted?
You want the truth, and you want somebody who's
Thank you.
there. And that's...
Is this a personal deal?
No.
This is we want the
I have
truth
nothing
in the
personally
case.
against you guys. I mean, of course, I'm upset because I'm in this position, but I don't care. I don't wish bad upon you guys. I don't talk shit to you guys.
Have we ill-treated you?
I know. I'm not that
Have we
kind of
not?
person. And even from the beginning, I've never given dirty looks. I've never been rude. It's a case, and it's business for everybody, and it is what it is, you know?
I know I don't have to say this, but I believe she would confirm it. I've told her from the first time, just tell the truth.
Just it.
And that's all I want.
And you know what? Had AJ done that, had Mark Davis done that, we would all not be here.
Yeah, I know. And do you? And honestly, if
Okay.
I was trying to protect AJ, do you think I would tell you? And AJ made me. AJ told me to post a bond. AJ, that's pretty much throwing him under the bus right there. I mean.
But it's the truth, right?
It's the truth.
Mark Davis made you sign or brought these motions to you.
And I signed them, and it's the truth.
Has there been anything today that we talked about that that we haven't talked about that you'd like to tell us? Something that maybe we forgot to ask, or?
Janelle, what's the plan with these guys? What have you been privy to? Are they asking you to do anything other than being truthful and honest? When you said you had this talk with AJ, did he tell you, Janelle, although you're going to go in there and talk to him, I want you to recon what the questions are, come back to me?
Absolutely not. I have no intention.
Do you have a meeting with Mr. Carson right after we get
No.
done with this?
No.
What's the bottom line
I
here?
have no intention of discussing this with AJ. He simply knows that I've taken a deal and that I am going to be a witness for the DA, which he would know whether or not I told him because Harris had already told him.
Yeah,
So, he's concerned for me because, he wants to fight it. And, he just wants to make sure that I'm doing what's right for me. And ultimately AJ is worried about me. I think, he's more concerned about me than he is for himself. Because obviously, I wish he would have taken a deal himself, and not fought this because I'm scared for him.
It's
And
the
I'm
right
scared-
thing to do,
and
Janelle,
I'm
is
scared
just to
for
step
his-
up and be
And that's
a
where I
man,
am.
right?
And I'm not gonna let the fact that AJ's my friend get in the way of what needs to be done. Ultimately, you guys have your evidence, AJ has his, I know what I know, and the judge is gonna figure it out. And I have no reason to lie. I'm not trying to help anybody or better anybody. I'm not trying to help myself even. I've told the truth. I've made mistakes. I signed things. I read these and it's absolutely absurd. I know why I'm involved. I understand now. In the beginning I thought this is baloney. Why did I get arrested? This is bull. If you're mad at Mark and AJ, just leave me alone. Well, now I can see.
Okay, thank you.
It's the truth. I'm not trying to help or hurt anybody. I want to tell the truth, and whoever it helps, and whoever it hurts. And that's where I stand.
That's fair.
And
It is what it is.
It is what it is. That's fair, and that's a good way to end it.
Okay.
John,
Mr. Hankins, thank you
pleasure.
very much.
Enjoyed
If you
it.
guys need
Thank you.
anything else,
Thank you.
just let us know.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and feel free to contact me
Let me get you a
anytime.
copy of this.
Okay, fair
Let
enough.
me watch my evidence. Sure.
I don't know how I gotta write a report. The report's basically gonna be that we talked,
Okay.
see the disc. So we gotta do it for discovery, so I don't know, I'll have Dave Mr. Harris take care of everything
Okay.
with discovery and all that.
Take that book while en route. I'll be
All
right
right.
back with you, Mr. Hankins.
Very well, I'll get this.
Oh, am I done, or did you?
I'll walk you out if you like,
Okay.
or if you prefer to go by yourself, you can do that as well. I think you're pretty safe around the DA's
I just wanted to,
office.
Hopefully.
I don't know. No, I not like me after that. Okay, well, give me a call if you need anything
I
else.
will, and you know how to reach me, so.
All right,
same
thank you.
here.
Have a good day, guys.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. You too.
Have a good day.
I think it went pretty well. Yeah, I have an acquaintance that owns